Welcome to Podcasting in 3 Easy Steps with me, Juliana.
And me, Suzi. It's a show that's all about helping you create a great podcast. Are you ready to share your voice with the world but don't know where to start?
Well, you've definitely come to the right place. We understand the excitement and challenges that come with launching your own podcast.
In this show, we break down the podcasting process into 3 simple steps that will guide you from idea to a brilliant podcast your audience will love. Our mission is to make the podcasting journey accessible and enjoyable for everyone.
Together, we'll explore the ins and outs of podcasting, from crafting engaging content to finding your own unique style and also connecting with your listeners. It's our aim to empower you with the knowledge and tools you need to get going.
Because podcasting isn't just about recording, it's about building a community, making meaningful connections and sharing your passion with the world. We're here to support you every step of the way.
So grab your headphones and get ready to begin your show.
And don't forget to hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. Hi, and in this episode of Back to Basics, we are talking about format for your podcast. So that's the way that we hear what you're going to say. So there's a number of different formats that I want to share with you. So there's obviously the interview one-to-one format. There's a monologue or solo podcast episode. There's a round table where you get a number of people around and talk about a topic. And there's kind of packages, so things that might take some interviews and some chat around certain topics. So I want you to think of these as examples. So the Fern Cotton Happy Place podcast, that's an interview format where she interviews a guest. And then there's the Daily Stoic podcast, that is a monologue or solo podcast. The News Agents, that's more of a round table, so a number of presenters with a special guest in the studio talking through political topics. And then a package kind of podcast would be something like The Missing Crypto Queen, where you have lots of different elements brought in. So you can tell where some might be more complex than others. Certainly the Missing Crypto Queen would have a number of different interviews, lots of research, music. Yeah, so there's lots of different elements coming into something like The Missing Crypto Queen.
Yeah, and that's one of my favourite podcasts. Have a listen if you haven't listened to it already. But I really like that narrative or documentary style podcast, like The Missing Crypto Queen, like Serial, like Sweet Bobby, and then my recent favourite from last year, The Girlfriends. But it's a really difficult format and a highly technical one, so don't try it when you're first starting out.
So our Back to Basics advice for you in 3 easy steps to decide which format is for you. And talking about those formats is number 1 is to keep it for the easiest and simplest and straightforward way of starting is the solo or monologue podcast. This is talking through ideas. Check out iTunes for lots of inspiration for solo podcasts, but it's the easiest way of repurposing what you already have. You're not having to rely on guests and getting people's diaries organised to record and lots of complex editing. So the easiest way to start is that solo podcast.
If it feels completely intimidating doing a podcast with just you, keep it short, because it will make it a lot easier if it's you talking for 5 minutes. You don't have to talk for half an hour. So starting off with short solo episodes, 5 to 10 minutes or 5 to 8 minutes is a really nice way to get going. So number 2 is to keep it as simple and as straightforward as possible. In a similar vein to number 1, the more straightforward the format, the easier it is to manage the whole process. So either a solo episode or an interview episode where it's just you and one other guest. And also think as part of this about being realistic with your time. If you have a 2-hour-long episode with multiple guests that you've recorded, it's going to take you forever to edit it. So don't start that way. Keep it simple, you and one other person, or just you, and short as I suggested. So keep it simple and straightforward.
We always come back to this, don't we, that the easier it is to produce and bring together, the more likely it is that you're going to keep going. And that is the whole aim of this, to just keep producing in a regular sprint of podcasts going out. So yeah, the simpler you keep it, the easier it is to make, the more joy it brings you, and you're going to keep that consistency. Okay, so number 3, Jules, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so number 3, I would say be consistent. Within a series, you want to keep as much consistency as possible. And it also gives you one less thing to think about. But a lot of audience members want to, when they start listening to a podcast, they want to know what they're getting. They want the same thing each time. However, and over to you, Suzi, for the however.
Yeah, so however, and I've worked with a number of clients on things like this, that they started off with their consistent solo podcast episodes, but then feel like that's manageable, let's bring in some other elements. So don't feel like because you've been always producing a solo podcast that, you know, you can't ever try something new. Look, this is podcasting. We write our own rules with this. So if you wanted to throw in an interview format podcast every month, you could do that. Or, you know, every other week you're bringing in different kind of elements, do it. I think the key would be, though, that you just let your audience know what to expect. So where they normally listen to you for 10 minutes every week, you really trail the fact that, well, next month we have a full interview with such and such a guest, just so they know what's coming, so they don't, you know, download an episode or go to listen to an episode that they think is going to be short and suddenly it's like not what they expected. So just give them a heads up. But definitely, if you are consistently putting out one kind, don't feel like you can't, you know, at certain times of the year or whenever you want, put in a different kind of format.
So just to recap our 3 steps for getting started with your podcast when it comes to format. Number 1, start with a solo format, just you, is the easiest way to get going. Number 2, keep it as simple and as straightforward as possible. Number 3, keep it consistent for when you get started. Thanks for listening to Podcasting in 3 Easy Steps. We hope it's helped you get started with creating your podcast.
Please share this episode with someone you think would love it. Follow so you never miss an episode and leave us a review. Oh, and also get in touch to tell us about your podcast and we'll share it with our listeners too. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. See you next time.